Hi everyone, welcome to another Literacy Fridays session. Today we continue in our series on understanding literacy assessment terminologies, those terminologies that you might have heard as it relates to literacy assessment. Today we look at visual discrimination. What is visual discrimination? Visual discrimination is the ability to notice subtle differences in objects, symbols, shapes, etc. So it could be colors. But for literacy assessment, we focus on the graphemes. Those are the letters. Because the letters are the graphemes, they are just symbols that are used to represent sounds. So in literacy assessment, we do visual discrimination tests to find out if the person is able to notice those little differences in the shapes of the letters. And it's one thing to see the letters in isolation, but within words, are they able to notice the differences and spot when a word is not the same as others in a list? So, when we're doing the literacy assessments as it relates to visual discrimination, we give the students a set of words to read and they need to identify which is different from each set. Let's test this. Can you find the word that is different? A visual discrimination test will have about 10 items. Yes, just 10 items usually. And the instructions will be placed at the top just like that, but the assessor will also read the instructions with the example, show the person exactly what is required of them. Then they will get time to do it. No, I know some persons may complain and say, oh, those words went too quickly on the screen, so it wasn't a fair attempt. Well, it all depends on the individual, and it usually doesn't take more than 5 seconds to find out the word that's different. However, unlike the auditory discrimination test, this one is not so much a timed activity. We would have looked at auditory discrimination already, but we didn't look at the test. With the test for auditory discrimination, the assessor would call the word, and this person being assessed would just say if they heard the same thing or if what they heard was different. For the auditory discrimination test, there would have been fewer words in each list, just 2 words for each list. But for the visual discrimination, you have 4 words generally for each list. So the assessor will not be rushing the individual to complete it within a specific time, but they would note how long the person took to figure it out, and they would also note the person's literacy behaviors while completing this part of the assessment. So the assessor would observe if there were any signs of frustration, if there were any attempts to use decoding strategies, or is it that the person had to squint the eyes? Is it that the person was shifting in their seat? Things like that. Were they trying to sound out things before circling them? All of that would be taken into consideration. Now, if the person is a proficient reader, we wouldn't expect them to be saying the words aloud. Now, if they have to sound it out, it means it could be that they have a problem with subvocalization, and we would have looked at subvocalization already. Now, if they're subvocalizing but still making errors, it could mean that the person is reading far too quickly, not at a good rate in terms of fluency, that is, and making silly errors. It could also signal that the person probably has conditions like astigmatism, which is the unevenness of the eyeballs, so they are not actually flowing properly in terms of what their eyes are seeing. So these visual discrimination tests can call out a lot of issues. Errors made on a visual discrimination could be due to alphabet knowledge. Person just doesn't know that letter, so they're not even able to subvocalize the sound. It could mean that the person is dyslexic, so there would be a range of them, so we would observe to see which ones did the person make errors on. Were they making errors where the T seems like an L, or they're looking at the F as a T, or the B as a D, or the D as a P? those would be signals, those could signal that this could be dyslexia that we're dealing with. However, that's not always the case. It could just be just a fast reader. The person is just rushing to get this over and done with. And it could also mean, as I said, eye issues. So there's a lot to take into consideration when we do these visual discrimination tests. But once we're able to identify the issue that's causing the errors, then we can correct it so that we can continue now to work on the child's literacy development. And that goes for adults as well. A person could be nearsighted, and persons who are nearsighted, sometimes you see them going so closely to the paper just to read it. Others will lift the paper and have to extend it forward. Some you will see the watery eyes, so it could be just allergies that's affecting the person on that day. So there are a range of issues. But once we are able to observe the literacy behaviors through the visual discrimination test, we can work on correcting those issues. I hope this lesson has proven to be informative. Now let's try this activity. Notice you are finding the words which are the same, not different this time.